talking about Symphonie Fantastique. Does anyone know the story of Symphonie Fantastique? This is one of the weird symphonies that has a whole story behind it, right? Specifically? Yeah, Cole, you want to give us the broad strokes?
Yeah, so there's this guy, and he like falls in love, and then he's like, oh, I'm sad, and then he like takes a bunch of drugs, and then he has a dream, and then there's this witch lady.
Yes.
And then they fight, and then there's like a death scene where he gets his head lopped off.
Yes.
And then it goes plop, plop, plop.
Yes. Very, very prominently featuring the bass. We'll talk about that. And then he continues hallucinating. Yes. This is the original, like, incel symphony in a weird way. It's about a guy who is rejected by the lady that he loves, and so he turns that into art, right? It's a tale as old as time, unfortunately. And Berlioz in this case, was really, really infatuated with, I'm sorry I don't remember the woman's name, but I believe she was an opera singer. She was
Scottish, right?
Yeah, I believe so. And he was a super fan of this woman's music, but also he kept trying to sort of get himself sort of involved in her life, right? In kind of a creepy way. She eventually tells him that no, she's not interested in, right? It takes him a long time to get over that. And one of the things he does is write this piece, right? And that's kind of a fun, unless you think about it too hard, story, right? That helps ground you in what this piece is, because the whole time there are references not only to sort of Berlioz himself, but that this whole thing has sort of an underlying story to it. It's what we call programmatic music, music that tells a discrete story. Scheherazade, Heldenleben, things like that have Zarathustra, we talked about last semester, right, have a very, very one-to-one story. Harriet Stetson? Smithson, that's it,
She was an actress in a
She's an actress.
play. She was playing some character.
Yeah.
And he saw it and he was obsessed with it.
And immediately, yeah. Right, so there was, and by drugs we mean the fun, super fun kind, because this was back in 18 who knows when you could just go to the drugstore and get heroin. So we mean the fun kind of drugs. He was doing lots of cocaine and heroin and telling everybody about it. It was a very strange time to be alive. Also, I think at this time, something like 65% of men living in Vienna over the age of 18 had some form of syphilis. Weird thing to think about, all of these composers were living in a time when just nobody had access to modern medicine, and everybody was just walking around dehydrated because you couldn't drink the water, and on drugs, and they all had STDs. It was a very weird time to be alive. Anyway, we get to Symphonie Fantastique. And does anybody know what in French the words idée fixe mean? It's pretty literal translation. I-D-E-E, idea, fix, F-I-X-E, the fixed idea, the idea that does not change. There's material in this symphony, which if you take a care to listen, it goes, right, it starts with that tune. Right? That musical material appears in all 5 movements in some form or another of this symphony, right? And it's what we call the idée fixe. It's some of the underpinning material that makes the symphony run. It's odd that it would be used across movements, right? It's what we call cyclical treatment, where material appears over and over and recurs across movements. The first excerpt we get to is first movement, right at the end of the exposition where this development is beginning, right? This is classic for not only tempo and rhythm and intonation, but dynamic contrast, and it has a lot of strange harmonic movement at the end, right? I would recommend getting up the A string for this, right? Save some in your down bow to go down and make a mid-bow sforzando, right? Then come back. And then from here, it starts can find, there are good opportunities to involve the thumb in this because at some point it's going to go really quickly, right? Right, as you get to the end of that, if you're clever with how you use it, there are good opportunities to bring the thumb out and make really good connections as you get to that. But it's fast, it's hard to get in tune, and there are a lot of little details. Take a look at the dynamics constantly coming out. Right, this is one of those spots where it's very literal, and he's looking for waves, right? So each bow, once you get to the end, right, should start and lengthen, and each one should get louder than the last. It's very hard to describe, but you have right, each bow coming down below where you started last time and ending above where you started, right? Everything getting louder. 1 to 4, 2 to 5, 3 to 6, right? All the way up until you get to the end at forte, in which you have, right? Ride those all the way till the end. Berlioz has these crazy cadences that never end, right? So he'll just hit you with 4 bars of, right? Keep intensity all the way through. If you're ever playing this piece for real, take very close look at the repeated section in the first movement. It doesn't look like much, but it's one of the hardest things to get together. The stuff right before, there's a repeat sign after rehearsal 5. It's the top of the page for me. But it looks like nothing, but it's so fast, and the things are quite difficult to get together. Same thing after number 11. It's not an excerpt because it's impossible to do solo, but getting it together in the orchestra is really, really quite difficult. The first movement is challenging, but it's one that we get through relatively quickly, right? The other small spot that's worth looking at rhythmically is the top of page 6, right? Is that in the second movement? Hang on, I'm sorry, 1 second. No, yeah, I'm mistaken, yeah. Yeah, moving in second movement. We now have the first spot of the B's, right? This is stuff that might get called, but if you see it, you should learn this piece anyway, right? When they say full symphony, this is one that gets called because it's mostly rhythm and articulation, right? Top of page 6, I'm gonna try to get this rhythm right. If you read it as notated, you'll get 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Right, so it ends with hemiolas. Some recordings you'll find will double dot this and make it, instead of, they'll go. Right? I personally love that. I think it sounds way better. It's not technically what's written in, but you'll find there's a recording with Boulez and Cleveland where that's done, and you'll see that it's not the most uncommon thing. Something to keep in mind. Going from there, right? It's the really short spot that really won't trip you up too much. We get into the third movement. This is the most prominent of kind of the B spots. Or wait. Oh yeah, beginning of the second movement. I'm sorry. This is one to watch because it's super exposed and the intonation is really questionable. Sorry, going back to right where the second movement starts. There's a lot of spots in this and I get them confused sometimes. This is really challenging, again, because you have to crescendo and decrescendo in the down bow and watch your contours, and it's very exposed, and the intonation is always an issue, right? Right, I missed it. Right, the contour of that, crescendoing in the down bow and then coming off it can be quite difficult. It's something that can catch you by surprise really, really quickly, right? Keep that in mind. Moving on, this is one of the longer excerpts, but it's a really good one. Let's 7 over here? Yes. Yes. Right? Movement 3, really, really boring if you're playing it, except for this spot, right? You're waiting along, and then little details come in, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Does anyone notice where the articulation changes? Right, the dots stop abruptly on the downbeat. In that case, it's not a typo, right? Very legato, as if they have lines on them, right? The point there is to create contrast, right? This keeps going, right? You get the same stuff. Right, maximum contrast always as it comes out. And now, looking ahead, before 42, we have poco animato, right? At 42, we have poco animato again. We have a rallentando, the next bar after that, which often doesn't get taken as much as it should. This often speeds up and speeds up and speeds up and becomes kind of frenetic by the end, until the very end, right? You'll get... 1, 2, 1, 2. Here it starts speeding up. Right? And then once you get into that stuff, it depends on the recording you follow. But oftentimes, once it gets into this diminished stuff, right? Right, this is about your ending tempo. Bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, ba, bum. Right, and it's going to get into 2, 3. Right, and then look ahead to the last few bars of this, right? And you'll get... Right, there's a lot of little details at the end to be aware of. This is one of those... Yeah, this is one of the B excerpts. It's long, but it's one to take a look at, right? Coming in, next big excerpt we get to, beginning of the 4th movement, right? This is what's called the march to the stake, right? The march to the scaffold, right? It's a march movement, but it's literally a sort of death march. Someone being led to the gallows, right? The guillotine. So, in the same version, in the same mood of that, right? Does anyone know this piece quite well? Has anyone played it before? It's awesome, right? It's really awesome. Right? You have this super solemn sort of G minor chord coming out, right? Everything is super subdued. Melody's coming over that, right? And then once you start getting a few bars before 50, things start to, you're crescendoing, and then 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The bowing I would recommend is just that one, where you go down, down, up, down, up, down, down. Super controlled. You don't even have to think twice. It's just a double down, and that makes it easy. Right? No problem there. Melody repeats again with a different resolution. We're going to E flat. Right? And that's another big part, right? I didn't really conceal this well enough. You need to come down. Right? Everything you can do to create contrast is going to be super important throughout this, right? It's contrast even beyond the level at which you would see in Beethoven, because he was crazy, right? This guy was high on cocaine. Just keep that in mind every time you think, should I have more dynamic contrast? Be like, yeah, he was high on cocaine. So yeah, you probably should, right? It's really not an exaggeration. This dude was crazy. You'll see this all over, right? I would continue with that bowing. When you do this, I also want you to, right, also take 56 to 59. This is one of the big spots that's going to get called if they call this movement, right? Start pretty much as loud as you can. Actually, Brian, this is a good extension spot because you can drop the D. And do you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th bar where you have that double stop? You can use that double stop from the open D harmonic and the A and go. Or if you don't, you can use that. I would 100% recommend it because at the point you're at, you're going to be double forte. As much as you can fill the bass. Sempre più forte. It's a 1 here, and then yeah, as big and loud as you can play. You're doubling like everything at this point. And then yeah. Dynamics here are quite important. Be careful of this stuff. You're going to want to find a good fingering. And then right? You're looking for this kind of chunk, resonant but off the string. Right? Now you get to these dots. You have a choice here, right? This is the one where you actually legitimately have two options. You can shoe shine, right? You can get there on the down bow and go down, up, down, up, down, up. Right? And you can use that. You sacrifice length with the downbeats, but you always get pa-pa every time, right? Very articulate ta-ta coming into every pickup. Right? That's the rosin eaters sort of move, right? The perhaps more cultured way that gives you the opportunity to have more length on the downbeats is to hook. Right? You get more potential anyway for length on the downbeats, right? Something to keep in mind, there's no rests here. It's not like in Beethoven 7, you don't have ta-ta-ta-ta where there's rest in the middle. Maybe something to think about, an argument for having them be hooked rather than shoe shine, but you legitimately have the option here and no one will think less of you for doing either one, right? In the orchestra, the principal might just be like, we're hooking these and you have to do it that way. But in audition, I would say you have the choice. Keep going all the way through. 58, the downbeat of 58. Savannah, did they make you do all downs here? You don't remember? You'll get to this spot from a couple bars before that, from 4 bars before that. That spot, really common. The upper string players will change that and go. And they'll do it all down bow. If you really feel like impressing someone in your audition, get really good and I could never get it. It's damn fast to do all down bows. It's real fast. But someone may ask you to do it, and you know what? You usually have enough adrenaline in a concert that you can pull it off. But it's real hard, and I'm not sure I would do it in an audition unless I had to. Fine, right? Have enough. I would like a little more articulation in my last couple eighth notes down low, but I can live with it, right? Moving on to last movement. I added one more. There's one of the shortest excerpts you'll ever have. Right at the bottom of the fifth movement, right? It goes allegro assai, whole note equals 67. If you want to learn this one, right at the end, it's got to be motoring. Because all of a sudden, right, you've had this introductory material. Right? 1, 2, 3, really slow, right? Quarter equals 63. Now we go immediately, allegro assai, whole note equals 63, right? We immediately go 4 times as fast. So it goes from bum, 2 to 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? It's motoring fast. If you're going to bring this, I would suggest trying to get it as quick as you can. And let's see. Get to a point where you can get to all that down bow and hit that. So whatever, right? Get to the point where you're hitting that on a down bow and you'll be good to go. But that's a metronome work spot, and that's just one that you need to learn and get under your fingers if you're going to play this piece, because it sneaks up on people every single time. And that's a you're fired kind of spot, because it's the one you should know. It's not actually that hard. It's just fast and surprising, right? So it's in there as sort of a B spot because it's easy to sneak up on you. After that, the currently rated #1 spot you're going to see in this symphony is the Witch's Round Dance, because it's really, really hard, right? We go into C major, going into 6/8, and this is basically just, if you can play this, you can usually get to the final round of a lot of auditions, because there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of little details, right? So starting from pick up to third of 70, right? You have, I like to take an up bow here. Right? Ba-bum, bum, ba-bum. Does anyone recognize that? Right? Offbeat 3/4s in 6/8. Right? You'll see this all over the place. Right? Instead of bum, bum, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you move that off by an eighth note, the center beat is the one that lines up. Bum, 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 bum. Right? Huh? Yeah. Brahms. Any Brahms will have this. But the point is, rather than lining up on the downbeats, you're lining up on beat 3. Bum, bum. Right? That's the best way to keep track of that. Bum, 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 bum. You're going to hit the 4th, 8th note of the bar, rather than the downbeats. And then from there, let me go slowly so that if you need, you can come back and grab fingerings and bowings, right? Coming from the beginning of second line, I'm starting down. Down here, and then piano. I'm starting this down, coming in. Right, so that I can be down bow for the end of it, right? Starting this, I think down bow. Yes, down bow. Sorry. Crap, sorry. 1 on that A after 72. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where the crescendo starts. Second beat of that measure, get to first finger on A. Right? The other big thing, check out these dynamics. Go double forte to piano, back to forte, piano. There's a trick bowing that helps make this easy, right? Take a double down at the end and go down, 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 right? Right? So the extra down bow will help you make piano at the tip and then come back to the down bow for the hard part. That being said, once you get to the end, yeah, downbeat of 73. If you start that up bow, you'll end up for the rest of it. So what I end up doing to get myself there is I slur the first two and then separate. So it's weird, and that bar before 73 you'll have to look at, but I think that bowing is absolutely worth it. Down, up. So you get to up on the downbeat of 73, which gives you, right? Right, and you'll get to. And at tempo, starting that up bow is a huge, huge leg up. You won't have to sneak a double up in a really fast part. It's really, really worth it. Once you get out of there, that's mostly it, right? Once you get to the end, that's pretty much it. It just needs tempo and a lot of attention to those little details. This guy was crazy, so the things that are written are true and they are what he wants. He was the first one to really have this craziness going on. It really is. That's the only way to really think about it, is that this guy was nuts. If you ever need a really good laugh, go to the orchestra library and find the treaty that Berlioz wrote about orchestration. Ooh. And just read what he says about all the different instruments, and you'll be really shocked, because this dude was crazy. Symphonie Fantastique is awesome. You should all listen to it, and if you don't like playing it, I don't know what to say. It's going to be a really long life of playing the bass and orchestra, because there's a lot to love in this part. And we don't have a lot. There's no Berlioz bass concerto, right? But he gave us a lot of stuff like this. There's a lot of great Berlioz for the orchestra, and it's definitely worth getting into. But yeah, he was crazy. That's all I've got for Symphonie Fantastique. Does anyone have questions about stuff they've seen from that, or anywhere else in the symphony that you are curious about?
I don't have my part with me. I don't think like any of us do. So if you could upload this like quick, then we could get the bones, because I haven't written down any bones.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll do my best to get it on tonight. Sorry, I've been really slow about it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll try to do it tonight. Yeah, other than that, yeah, this piece is great. I would definitely recommend finding a recording you like and just copy it, because there are a lot of conventions with how the tempos are changing that you just kind of get used to as you do it with a recording. Thanks. It's a lot of fun. I'm jealous of that removable mic too.
I mean, it might help in the future.
Yeah.
I don't have a case for it yet.